Jancis was the first person outside of the trade to pass the Master of Wine exam in 1984, and in 2003 was awarded an OBE, which is the Officer of the Order of the British Empire, a recognition bestowed upon notable personalities for the great impact they are making in their line of work. She is my personal inspiration, as she is to most of you, I'm sure. My joy knows no bounds as I welcome Jancis Robinson to join me in a freewheeling conversation about her personal journey, her accomplishments, and her thoughts on the bewildering and the opportunistic wine market called India. So Jancis, thank you for joining us today.
I perhaps explained to you that I'm invited to do these online things really very often, and so often that I'm afraid I usually say no, because otherwise I wouldn't have time to do all my work. But I do feel strongly that I want to encourage India to adopt wine more widely, and so this is my little bit.
When you started out your career path, Jancis, did you always naturally know you wanted to be a wine writer? Because you're obviously excellent at that, but did you sort of have a plan? Did you have a vision or a very clear goalpost? Did you ever think you would be this regarded, this famous, and was that always the goal?
Oh, I always enjoyed writing, and I had a wonderful red Burgundy when I was at Oxford, which made me realize how great wine was, and it made me realize that wine satisfied two of my great desires. One was that it was very sensually pleasing, and the other was that it was obviously kind of intellectually satisfying as well. There was lots of layers to wine as a subject.
What's been your overriding impression of India as a market?
Terrible legislation that gets in the way. It's not easy for people who make and sell wine in India, is it? A very complicated market, and it's still developing a wine culture, because certainly the very first time I came to India, I met a female wine writer who said none of her friends could understand why she was bothering with wine, because whiskey gets you drunk so much quicker, which didn't seem to me to get kind of quite the essence of wine. And I did certainly notice then that there wasn't the habit of drinking wine with meals, that there was a lot of spirits drinking,
yeah,
and drinking, and then kind of after drinking a lot, suddenly eating, and that was it. It wasn't the rhythm of a kind of European wine accompanied meal, if you like.
Did you enjoy the wines? I'm going to just get straight to the heart of the...
I wrote up all my tasting notes on jancisrobinson.com, and you know, it's not a climate that's naturally attuned to vine growing, but it's remarkable how well some producers fight that and produce some really pretty decent wine. And certainly once tourism resumes, I'd have thought there'd be many more opportunities for Indian wine. I mean, it's still a novelty. You know, people are exporting expensive wines out of China, but I can't see Indian wine being a major export item, really, for a long time.
Do you foresee India to be more prominent, let's say 10 years forward from now? Do you see that it's likely to make a bigger name for itself as a producer of wines or as a consumption market of wine? Where do you see a brighter opportunity for India as a market, just based on your own personal experience or understanding?
Well, I don't say to Indian wine producers, do not export ever. But I think the potential is obviously for consumption, and for the huge numbers of middle-class Indians that there are, many of whom travel and are exposed to wine drinking. I think India is a massive potential market.
Sure.
I suppose selfishly, with the English language, I hope that my books and so on, my writing has a market there too.
What have been your biggest learnings in this entire journey, this rewarding career?
There's been only one time in my 45 years writing about wine where I ever thought I knew it all, and that was when I came top in the WSET diploma exam, and I thought, right, that's it. I know all about wine now. You know, that's it. And how stupid was that? And since then, you know, I just keep learning. I mean, every day I learn something. I don't. Have you seen this simile where if you know that much, the perimeter with your ignorance is that big, and if you know that much, the perimeter with your ignorance
is that much. The more you think you know, the lesser you know, basically. Yeah. So I can fully relate to that feeling you said, which is we sometimes just in our naivety tend to think we can do this, and then we discover there's so much more to learn. It's this never-ending world of wine to learn about. I'm going to quickly ask you about how exciting is it that you are also an advisor for the wine cellar of the British monarchy, and you are the advisor for the Queen. You know, you're responsible for the wines that the Queen drinks.
Well,
so how does that work? How exciting is that?
Full committee of us, mostly wine merchants with a royal warrant. Me and Michel Roux Jr. We're the only two who are not supplying wine ourselves. And what I like about the tastings is that they're blind, and I don't get enough opportunities to taste blind. I don't mean blind from the point of view of identifying the wine, but blind from the point of view of assessing it, which I love doing. So that's useful professionally. And it is, I have to say, even now, rather a thrill to kind of push your way through the crowds outside Buckingham Palace and go,
wow, that must be surreal.
It is a bit, I mean, it's silly to feel that it's fun, but it is fun. Yeah.
How do you tackle wine snobs or wine bores?
Oh,
and how do you find them? Give us some telltale signs. There's a few budding ones in India.
I bet there are. Well, I think as a shortcut, anyone whose conversation is centered on which wines they have in their cellar, but they're not opening any of them, that is mega black mark. Wine is not really a great subject for conversation. It's great if it's in your glass and you can talk, yeah, I love this because, or the story behind it is this. But just, oh yes, I tasted the 2003 and it wasn't as good as the 2005, but I've got all vintages and the second wines in my cellar. Oh, you know, that's just not fun at all.
India is seeing a great love for South African, Chilean, and Spanish wines. Some nice value for money Spanish wines coming into India now.
Not just red. Yeah.
And lots of red. Well, India drinks 75% red. And that was actually also one of my questions, which is, you know, we're all baffled, even as trade, of why such a hot country like India drinks more red. And then I also read that the UK, which is so cold, almost drinks a bit more white than red. Yeah. So nobody, like, what's your best assessment of why that is? Like,
funny, isn't it? Well, certainly when I started out, white was the thing. White would have been probably a good 2/3, if not 70% of all the wine drunk in the UK. So it's partly historical. I don't know. Do Indians see red wine as sort of more powerful?
I think for Indians, it's the imagery. You know, I think the imagery of wine is what is popularizing wine in India a lot. We see more women taking to wine because they perceive it as more socially civilized or socially more, culturally more accepting to be seen drinking wine versus a glass of whiskey. Or if they're drinking vodka, they often have to spike it with Coca-Cola. You know, I'm talking about traditional households, and we don't have to go even outside into rural places. This is something that trends even within our cities. This is around us where we live. So we have a little bit of that. Also with the millennial, I think the younger lot, they you know, everybody sort of thinks wine is red first before anything, you know, when you think of the imagery. So it's mostly for that, but also the notion that wine is healthy. Do you believe that, by the way? Is that something you find yourself being asked a lot? And what is your general stance with people on that?
We can't escape the fact wine's got alcohol in it, and you become an alcoholic drinking nothing but wine. And so that's something we've always got to have in the back of our minds. But yeah, I confess that I enjoy all the bits of medical research that are pro wine. And I'm probably more skeptical about the ones that say, you know, that are anti-wine.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much, isn't there, on each side.
So should we get on with the rapid fire?
Yep.
Right. Your favorite drink other than wine? So if you're not drinking wine, you'd be drinking?
Well, I do like tea, but I also like margaritas. I think maybe the acid.
Other than tea and water, which is non-alcoholic, as an alcoholic beverage, it would be margarita.
Yeah, but I don't have one. I probably have about 1 or 2 a year.
Do you like sakes, Jancis?
Yes, I do actually. Yeah, but I'm terribly aware of how little I really understand sake, because I know quite a lot about wine. It means that I realize how little I know about sake.
We're seeing a little bit of love for sake growing in India. Do you remember the first wine you consumed, or your most vivid memory of wine?
I think it's a very heavily sulfured Slovenian Italian Riesling, which everyone called Riesling, from Lutema. And it was a very, very popular branded wine in the UK in the 60s. And it was shipped to London docks in bulk and stuffed full of chemicals to sort of stop it re-fermenting.
It's incredible how most of us, our first wines, almost been a very ordinary, simple, and or sometimes almost edging on not so nice or dull wine, isn't it? Most of us. I mean, mine was just a very plain, dull Bourgogne wine. I won't name the producer, but it was a Chardonnay. So anyway, so okay, a wine region you haven't visited yet.
I haven't been to the Baltic states, like, you know, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, but they don't produce wine yet. But I have been to the vineyards of Poland now.
Wow.
Been everywhere in all European countries. Haven't been to Bolivia, which has a little wine industry. Haven't been to Peru, apart from a plane plopping down in Lima. And I'm sure there are lots of Italian regions that I haven't been, because Walter Speller does a great job for us in Italy.
Your favorite travel destination, where you would always like to go for wine?
Where I am now, in our house in the Languedoc, is my favorite destination. It's lovely and peaceful.
I think it's widespread knowledge that Riesling is your favorite white wine. Which is your favorite red grape variety or black grape variety?
Yeah, it's awfully difficult. I just love the variety.
The whole joy of wine is the discovery of the unknown, isn't it? Like, yeah.
A simple, all the newcomers, and it's lovely when you discover something which is amazing from a producer you've never heard, or a place you've never heard.
If you weren't a wine professional, what would you be, Jancis?
Something to do with writing, definitely.
Awesome. So the best way to discover wine is to just drink it and let your own palate guide you?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have a final message for India and young aspiring professionals of India and wine lovers in India?
If you can possibly lobby to get those laws changed and taxes reduced, you'd be doing the whole wine world a great favor.